This is Top of Mind, the Dr. Patrick Slowinski Show.
All right, welcome everyone to a special episode of Top of Mind. A lot of you have heard me talk about Polish American Heritage Month, which is in October, originally in August, but in order to get all the kids out of school and everyone off their summer vacations, it was changed from 1981 from August to 1984 to October. And Andy and I are both Americans with strong Polish roots. I was a guest on his radio show years ago when I was the consul general in Krakow, when the Russians decided, unfortunately, to invade Ukraine. And so I went on Andy's show and talked to his listeners about that. Andy Gołębiowski is a friend of mine and a wonderful Polophile. He loves everything Polish just about, knows a tremendous amount. I really recommend his show. It's every Saturday at 11 o'clock Eastern. And it's just full of Polish culture, music, history. There's also a component of Catholicism, and we'll talk a little bit about that tonight, and how that religious influence has an effect on Poland in the past, present, and in the future. So Andy, welcome. Witam w podcaście Top of Mind. It's good to see you.
Dziękuję. It's so nice to see you moving around. Radio is, just audio, so we never see each other.
No, it's
Thank
true.
you very much for the invitation.
Well, I wanted to have you on. I've been telling producer Victor, we've got to get Andy on, who we also call Andrzej, and I'm Pat. So I was really happy to have you on. We just had a whole month of Polish American Heritage Month in October, and now we have a big day coming up if you are Polish, and that is Polish Independence Day, which we call Dzień Niepodległości, which is a mouthful, but it means Independence Day, and that is on the 11th, the same as our Veterans Day here in the United States.
Right.
And Andy, I wanted you to just give us a little bit of your thoughts on what you tend to see and do in October and how you've seen Polish American Heritage Day kind of develop over the years.
There's so many anniversaries throughout the year. In Buffalo, where I'm based, it was proposed that May be the Polish American Heritage Month because there's so many important anniversaries. May 3rd is Polish Constitution Day, which is a huge deal in Polish history. Monte Cassino, the victory at Monte Cassino by the Polish troops on May 18th, the birth of Karol Wojtyła, later St. John Paul II, also May 18th. My mother's birthday, May 18th. Actually, no, that's an interesting story. That it's her official birth date, but during the war, somehow her date was changed. It's actually May 14th. I'm the son of Polish immigrants to the United States. I was born in the United States in a bilingual home. Actually, my first language was Polish. I learned English in kindergarten. My parents were courageous enough to the point that they thought my brother and I would learn English anyway. We would learn in school, we would learn from neighbors, we would learn through TV. And my mom says in 3 weeks I was speaking Polish, and by 8th grade I won the spelling bee in the grammar school. So it's not to boast, it's to say to other immigrant parents, do not be afraid to speak your native language at home exclusively. And then there are parents who say, well, my kid won't learn English. Well, who should they learn English from? Americans or people in England, or from you with your broken English? They will learn anyway. I'm also a translator and interpreter, and it's sad sometimes when I receive work from children of Polish immigrants who want to know what their parents were all about. I had a World War II veteran who had kept a journal, and his son hired me, paid good money to find something out about his father. So again, words of caution and inspiration. Speak your language at home, whatever it may be. Your child will be and I've made good money being an interpreter and translator thanks to my parents.
Yeah, I've also been, I'm second generation, so but from Milwaukee, and so had that Polish influence my whole life, and then had learned enough Polish, through a combination of wonderful things, including a stay at the university in Sopot and in Gdańsk,
Hmm.
right after communism fell. That
Hmm.
was an interesting time, right? And so I've had this really close connection. In America, with names like ours, it's kind of hard to get away from, even if we try, our Polish culture. But I think that's what makes it so great. So outside of Polish American Heritage Month, tell us a little bit about the Polish American community. We use the word Polonia very freely, but for
Yeah.
our listeners who know nothing about Polish diaspora culture, what is Polonia?
Polonia basically is the community of Polish people outside of Poland, wherever they may be. Polonia, even though it's the Latin and Spanish and Italian word for Poland, to Poles around the world and to Poles in Poland, it means the diaspora. It means the community outside of Poland.
And we have lots of pockets. We don't have as many as we used to during the high immigration
Hmm.
levels, right? Milwaukee, for example, has changed tremendously.
Right.
And
Even Chicago, even New York City. And one of the reasons for my program, which reaches people all around the world, is to reach people who've moved away from those centers, who've moved away from, sometimes I'll get these questions. I've moved to Arizona. I don't even know where to buy opłatek. I don't know where to buy the Christmas wafer, or I don't know where to get my basket blessed for Easter. And my program started actually out of advising people on Facebook groups. There are probably close to 200 Facebook groups that have a Polish theme. And so I would go in there and help people out with language, with spelling, sharing links, because there are people who are third, fourth, fifth generation in the United States who have lost touch. Babcia, grandma has died, parents assimilated. They might remember smells from home. They might remember a few foods, but beyond that, they're desperate to get any fragment, any trace that gives them some meaning, but they don't necessarily know where to turn to. And so during COVID, I started this program. I said, let's take this Facebook advice column that I'm doing and have it go through audio, through the radio, which would include music in that case. So I've been involved in media also. I've worked in television, I've worked in radio before. And so it was a natural way to meld. And I like using my voice as well,
yeah, we
rather
have a
than
great
just,
voice.
and on Facebook sometimes you get some crazy debates and people coming at you, and sometimes things become political or just too much drama. This way, I produce the program, I have control, and I do obviously hear from people as well, and it's very nice to hear from people. And my dream also had been to teach the Polish language through the
Yes.
program. And it took me
Those are
about
not
5 years. Yeah, it
Yeah,
took me
tell
about
that's
five
funny.
years to find the right teacher. And by the right teacher, Pan Marek, who we have teaching, is an American who studied in Poland. And why is it good that he's an American? Because he's able to explain to you. He's able to answer your questions. You may ask a Pole, why do you say it this way? I don't know, it's just the way we say it. Well, Pan Marek studied at the University of Warsaw. He studied phonology, which teaches you how to align your mouth and your tongue
Right. And
and
we
your
clench
teeth and
our
your
jaws
muscles.
when we speak. We really do,
Yeah, and the most difficult sounds for Americans or non-Polish speakers is the differentiation between the sounds sh and sh, for
Yeah.
example, or r. Well,
Yeah.
he says, unless you have a speech impediment, unless you have some physical problem with your mouth, with your oral cavity, anyone can learn how to differentiate between sh and sh and say r like Poles do. He'll use a trick like put a piece of chewing gum in your molars and go, then put it up front and say shh.
Yeah, the fresh cheese, right?
Right,
It's
exactly.
fresh cheese.
So
No, it's
we've got over 1,000 people from around the world signed up for these lessons. And the great thing about it is that you can follow them anytime. So you mentioned that the program is on Saturdays. It's on Saturdays live, but most people listen to radio when they want to listen these days.
yeah, you
You
can
know, look
just
at podcasts. Look at the thing you're doing right now. It's not
yes.
live.
No,
It's
it's not
whenever
live.
people have the time.
People can watch it when they want to, or when they get their steps in, they can just listen to it,
Right.
which is
So
great. They can have video or audio. And is it the same for your Polish lessons, or is it just audio?
no, just audio. Pan Marek is convinced that he wants people just to close their eyes and listen or to follow
Oh,
along with. We send out guides, actually. We send out materials to every person who signs up. Otherwise, you're looking at the teacher. What's he wearing today? You know, he seems to have a cold, this and that. You're distracted by other things that are happening on the screen.
exactly.
So
But
I'd like to give out the address is very simple. It's polishprogram.com, polishprogram.com. There you can sign up for the lessons and you can also listen to every past episode.
bit intimidating, right? Polish, unlike English, has cases, which we call
Hmm.
przypadki, which can be difficult, and putting all these things in cases. But I think it's a lot of fun to learn Polish, and I really enjoy it. And I am like you. I have kind of passed that on to my children as much as I can. I can't make them speak, but
Right.
spending time in Poland has always been a great way for them to learn the language and make them go and say things and make them go and buy
Hmm.
things and make them, kind of
And I
use the
don't know
language.
what your experience has been, but I find Poles to be quite tolerant if you make mistakes.
Oh yeah, they're not like other European languages. I'll be very diplomatic here, where you get scowled at, and I think it pulls like sort of like Finns and people I met from Iceland. If you can even make a coherent sentence, they're impressed because
Hmm.
those languages are just so difficult.
Yes.
Hungarian, we could throw in there, Lithuanian, any of those languages that are the Finno-Ugric groups of
Hmm.
family. It's just, but Polish is constantly rated one of the most difficult languages to learn. So how do you get Pan Marek and yourself to convince people to give it a shot?
Well, number one, we have listeners who are mostly of Polish extraction. So we say, make your ancestors proud, get close. You know, you learn the language, at least a little bit of the language, you get to understand where you're from, and you get to understand maybe your parents and your grandparents a little bit more. Poland is so easy to travel to these days since 1990. You can go to Poland, you can do your ancestry research, hook up with your cousins, even though many people, almost all young people speak English in Poland
Right.
right now. But you'll just understand so much more. There's just so much more depth to the understanding. Even with the music, you know, it's not enough just to listen to the melody or the rhythm, but there's such great poetry in the music that I play, for
Oh,
example,
for sure.
in the program. And people are, they're just losing out so much by not knowing the lyrics, not knowing the language. Some people have practical uses. Maybe they have a spouse, they're not Polish background, and they have a spouse who's Polish, so it helps with the communication. Just so many
Well,
reasons. And it also exercises your brain.
yes, and challenges it, but it clearly helped me. I never would have become the consul general in Krakow had I
Hmm.
not spoken Polish. It just
Right.
wouldn't have happened.
Right.
I wanted to segue from what you said about going back to Poland. Producer Victor, I think we have the first map, number one there. I think number one we're going to show you, and you know this part of Poland. So the first one is number one, is the map, if you have it there, Producer Victor. And right down in the bottom there, it's not showing up exactly where I wanted to, but if you move the cursor, Producer Victor, down to the southeast, yeah, there's a little bit of red there. That's where my family is from. And then if we could go to number two, I will show you one of my paternal grandfather's church where he was
Hmm.
baptized in Łęki Dolne, Poland, which is near it's in the Dębica County,
Uh-huh.
and it's near Pilsno. And what a
Right.
beautiful wooden church.
Yeah.
So when I was consul general, I went back to where my family grew up and before they immigrated to the States. And I found my grandfather's baptismal records. I talked to the
Mm,
priest. My great grandfather was fire chief at
wow.
one time, and and I have tons of cousins, and we all have these yamichki, right? We have these little dimples. It
Hmm.
is really funny that we are cousins separated apart. But I found out that I have hundreds of cousins in Poland still. And so it was really nice to just go and meet many of them. And it really inspired my daughters who were living with me and going to school. I had a daughter going to Jagiellonian University in Krakow. I mean, what an experience, right? Just to really dig into your ties. And I always tell them, with a name like yours, you should should be able to say something besides, the standard bad words everybody seems to know these days.
Yeah, well, the first challenge is getting Polish Americans to go to Poland. I always say Polish Americans have been buzzing around Poland, buzzing around, and never landing. They'll go to France, they'll go to Italy, they'll go to Spain, Germany, anywhere but where their people are from. And so if you're going to go to Europe, you must go to Poland. And if you go
Tell
to
us about your
Poland, you must find where your people are from
yes.
because I always say this, those museums will always be there. Those beautiful sites will always be there. People come and go. Do your genealogy before you go. Find out who the oldest person is because they won't be around. This may be the only time you go to Poland and you get to
Exactly.
ask them, so many things and get to know so much about yourself. Sometimes, I don't know why, but Americans seem to be so timid, I guess, about reaching out to family. I don't know why that is.
Yeah,
But we had a trip to Poland in September
tell us
for
about
my listeners. And two of
You've
the
got another
people
one
we,
planned.
I'm sorry.
You have another one planned, I understand.
Yes, we have two more planned in June and September. If anyone would like to go, just
That's great.
email me at andy@polishprogram.com. Andy@polishprogram.com. So we offer a lot of free time on these guided tours so that people can go visit their ancestral villages. And two people did break off from the group, and it was one of the best things they ever did in their life. Just to
That's
sit in that pew where Babcia was going to church and see the baptismal font where she was baptized really helped this fellow traveler to connect with who her people were and reconnect that chain that was broken.
Oh, I love
So
it. I think
again,
it's fantastic. You're doing amazing work. I want to show you another clip. I think it's number 4, Victor. So I went back and because I'm a second generation diaspora guy, I went back and I was able to find my great grandparents and grandparents' home in Milwaukee, and it's still
oh,
there.
this looks like Buffalo.
Yeah, it really does, and, it has that flavor, and then, I had a really great blessing to go back, I think it was in '23. Milwaukee, honored me for the work I've done on Polish American issues, and, the Polish American Congress gave me an award. I think you have those
Mhm.
there, the next one, um,
Congratulations.
and I have to tell you that that's a particular award that will stay with me forever.
Hmm.
If you wanna show the next one, Victor, um, the the awards there. But yeah, that was a special day for me to go back. And I'll tell you why it was particularly special. I had time, um, Andy, between when I was getting the award and meeting with friends and my grandparents' cemetery, and most of my relatives in Milwaukee, they're Polish, they was right around the corner. So from the place where I was,
Hmm.
and so I went and visited them at the cemetery, and it was such a great experience.
Hmm.
And that's something else you can do if you do go back to Poland is go to the cemeteries, which are often
Yes.
well kept up, and you can find extraordinary information about your relatives.
And if you have the good fortune to go in November, you must go to Poland in November, November 1st for All Saints into All Souls night. They say the cemeteries are so lit up with candles that you can see the map of Poland from the air if you're in an airplane. It is it's hard to describe. You have to be there or you have to see these bird's eye view photos. I'm sure you've been there, Patrick.
Tell us
The
more
first
about it,
yeah, the
about all
first time the first time I was ever there was in the town. I should say this. My parents, the map that you showed, are from areas that are not on that map. That is a post-1945 map. So my parents
Yours,
are from the parts of eastern Poland, which are Western Ukraine now. And they were moved to what's now Western Poland, which was taken from the Germans. And the first time I went to um, the cemetery alone was November 1st, actually, in Oława, which is the town near Wrocław where my mom's family settled. And it was getting dark. And you know how the fog looks in Poland, right? Well, there
Mhm.
was like smoke, incense smoke mixing with this fog and singing of these mournful songs from the distance. And this procession was approaching, people with candles, and all these graves were lit up with candles, and it was dusk, and it was just something surreal. Like I was like in a dream-like state. And ever since then, I said, you know what? We don't do this in the United States outside of communities that have freshly arrived immigrants. I even looked in the Buffalo Polish Daily because we had a daily until 1958, I believe. Even since the early 1900s, I could find no mention of people going to the cemetery, especially on November 1st or November 2nd. So Buffalo is on the border of Canada. In Canada, there are many fresh Polish immigrants. Toronto is like an enormous place. It's an hour and a half from Buffalo. I go up there to a store that imports those special Polish lanterns that are protected from the weather, and I bring them in bulk to Buffalo. Excuse me. And we have now what I call Polish Ancestors Day and Mass for All Souls at the cemetery. And so people come out. We have the genealogists there helping people with their research, with any of their brick walls. We have people with maps so they identify where their great grandparents or grandparents are buried. And we also sell those lanterns for charity. And people cherish them so much. People are fourth, fifth generation because they had never experienced anything this rich. You know, Americans may go, actually, the cemetery gets the most visitors on Mother's Day, which is the opposite end of the calendar. But to come out in this, especially in the Northeast or the Midwest, right, the way our climate is, it's just something really beautiful to experience.
Yeah, and I think unfortunately, as much fun as it is for kids, more American and in many ways Canadian holiday of Halloween kind of detracts from what it's really about
Mhm.
in terms of religion. You and I are both Roman Catholics. I want you to talk a little bit about um, why that faith has been so important to Poles. Not all Poles, of course. Not everyone has to be Catholic just because you're Polish by any means. But what is the connection between Roman Catholicism and not only people who live in Poland, but diaspora as well?
Right. Well, because Poland had been under occupation for so long, 123 years for the longest period of time, it was really only in the church where people could find their language in some of the partitions, some of the occupations. People could huddle, people could be together in an independent organization. Take communism, right? From 1945 to 1989 or 1990, there were no independent organizations, organizations independent of the government, even the scouts, even cooperatives, right? Everything was controlled by the government. And there was no such thing as volunteerism, even in Poland back then. You just didn't belong to independent organizations. And the only place that gave refuge was the church when people from other powers had tried to suppress Polish identity, Polish language, Polish culture, Polish history. The church is where you had your safe space, where that could be talked about. And, you know, obviously things change with prosperity wherever in the world. People believe in this, I call it a myth of the self-made man. I've created my own success. No one has helped me with it. There's no providence that blesses me with any fortune. And so people say, We don't need it anymore. What's the Polish saying? Jak trwoga, to do Boga. When there's troubles, you seek God. Well,
Right.
there's less troubles now. Poland is in the best position for the average citizen, has the best conditions in its entire history. I think you'll agree, Patrick. There's never been
100%.
a golden age. There were golden ages, but for a small minority of people.
Right. And I was there, as we were talking before the program. I was there right after communism as a student. So I
Hmm.
was still subject to a lot of the old ways of looking at the things. And I had an aunt, a wonderful aunt, who took me with her as she went to go vote the communists back in.
Hmm.
And a year later, of course, she was mortified that she had done that, but she was really brainwashed, and she admitted it. She said, "I
Mm,
just wanted things to go back to normal."
yeah.
And they were just so used to having the boot on their neck, so to speak. And so it was hard for her to become more independent. But we talked a lot about that. And now to see Poland from that moment when I was a student to coming back years later and then being the consul general, completely different country in for the better. I want to talk to you a little bit about the ties with Catholicism in Poland. And I
Hmm.
also, can you go, you have had in your program, Andy, a big component has been prayer and spirituality, and you brought in a wonderful man who's left us, but who
Yes.
I've listened to quite a bit on your program.
Hmm.
I'm kind of a secret listener of yours, but Father Czesław Krysa was an amazing
Oh,
man. He's with his maker now, and truly a great guy. Could you show that photo of Andy and Father Krysa?
Father Krysa was just an amazing treasure for the entire Polish community, not just in Buffalo.
No,
His master's thesis was on Polish Christmas Eve, on Vigilia, which is
yeah.
so important for Poles around the world. It's the Bible with a small b on preparing everything from recipes, everything to handmade ornaments, to stories, to music, which was very important to him. His doctoral thesis is on blessing of food at Easter time. And he was just, you see him smiling there. He was also very jovial. He could be very down to earth. But when he was on the altar, he was all there. He was just so focused on the task at hand of worship. And so he was he died unexpectedly at the age of 70, but he left behind recordings on the show, which I replay now. You
Yes.
see in the middle, I've pasted in a little photo there of the znicze, the lanterns that I talked about at the cemetery in the last episode. He talked about why that's so important. And we also got to sing during our sessions on the
Yes.
program. His books are available. The one on Christmas Eve is called A Polish Christmas Eve. That's it's called, and it's available online. It's an heirloom piece. Every Polish American home should own it, and
We
many
should
do.
put that in the show notes too, producer Victor, on Father Czesław Krysa and his book. Andy, if you send
And
this
I
to
can send you the link.
yeah, send us the link and we'll be sure to put it on
Hmm.
underneath your YouTube.
So faith and Father Chris, it's so hard to separate the faith from the culture and the faith so intertwined. And as I get older, as many people get older, they also start to think of, well, where am I going? Where did I come from? What are the true goals of our life here on earth? And, you slow down a little bit. It's not just all about having a good time.
No, and one of the things that I'm sure your fellow travelers that go to Poland, if they've never been to Poland,
Hmm.
I'm sure you're taking them to a kościół, right, or a
Yes.
cathedra, and let them see what they're really like. In Krakow, we have the very famous Mariacka, or the Mary's Cathedral there, and just it is it is a game changer. If you have not been to a place like that in
To
Poland,
Częstochowa. Yeah, we went to Częstochowa, and
it's
I
just
asked for every traveler to send a review of the trip, and one said that was the highlight for her, was to be where, because Polish Americans, whether we're third, fourth, fifth generation, there still is that memory, somewhere in the memory bank, what the Black Madonna is, or what Our Lady Częstochowa is, and to see it there, the original live, is very rich and meaningful. What Father Krysa talked about a lot is meaning. You know, we need meaning in our life, whether we're Roman Catholic, whether we're of a different religion, or searching. Things need to have meaning, not just you know, to eat 20,000 potato chips. What's the meaning of that, right? But for everything to have meaning. So
I
that's
agree. I agree. I have a little guest here who's bothering me here.
uh-huh.
My little Peshek here, Coco, is joined the program, folks, if you can hear in the back scratching. I wanted to tell you myself, you know, Andy, that I had taken sometimes we take different paths in life, but a part of my being Polish has also brought me back to the church. And
Mm-hmm.
I even pray the rosary now in Polish, which
Mm.
is so much fun to do.
Mm-hmm.
The Hail Mary in Polish for me just means so much. I don't know if it means more, but it's different, and it's really a wonderful thing to be able to be bilingual and to say these prayers.
And the
And
Polish liturgical music, you know, there's nothing like it. They're just, and it's so hard to translate. There is a series that people should know about during Lent, and Poles take Lent very seriously.
yes, they
They
do.
really take it seriously as a period of accounting, right? A
I was
period
hungry
of
about
cleansing, of preparing, of making yourself better, of pledging that you're going to be a better person. And the hymns during Lent are just very moving. There's a series called Gorzkie Żale, the Bitter Lamentations,
yeah.
which actually were composed in the 18th century in the Church of the Holy Cross, the same church where the heart of Chopin is entombed in one of the pillars. It's right in the middle of Warsaw. But I've looked at those, and Father Krysa and I talked about it a lot. He put out a hymnal, actually, Polish hymnal with English translations. He did a wonderful job on many of those hymns because the people who came to his church no longer knew the language. But he said the melodies are so beautiful, at least let them sing those melodies. But the bitter lamentations, very difficult to, because it's not a, you cannot translate it word for word. You've got to translate the context. So you need to be there really to
Right.
explain all that. But the hymns, you know, my church was Corpus Christi Church, served by the Pauline Fathers from Częstochowa, actually in Buffalo. And I would sing on the choir, and we'd have organists who were not of Polish background, and they'd say, wow, they'd look at the notes and say, this composer did this. Well, this is interesting. You know, we're not taught to write this way. So it's very rich. You know, what bugs me, pet peeves, Poland does not realize the richness that they have. And when you look at the liturgical music, you know, there are all these gospel wannabes in Poland now, and I just can't listen to it. And when I look at it, I'm sorry. I have to be honest. I'm embarrassed for them. I say, be yourself. Let the African Americans do this. Let the original creators of this do this. They will do it a million times better. Do what is part of the continuity in Polish history and culture. But, you know, we can talk honestly here. Poland's biggest problem is the inferiority complex that continues way into through the 20th and into the 21st century. They've had
I'm a
almost
little bit
40
positive.
years, I think they've had almost 40 years of freedom, and there's still that inferiority complex. You can see it in the use of English language, which is really compounding in the Polish language, and it's about showing off. It's about, well, you know, I don't want to be considered a bumpkin. I want to show that I know more here.
I think
Don't
it's
take
changing
don't
though.
take Polish words and replace them with English words, perfectly adequate Polish words, and replace them with English words.
There is an
It is
interesting
changing.
phenomenon
It
going
is
on though,
changing. The more
right?
people get to travel and they're able to come back now. Under communism, they could travel sometimes, but they weren't able to always come back, right?
Well, Poland has a great reputation, especially among young men in the United States who have gone specifically to Poland over the years to look for wives that are going to
Hmm.
have values similar to them, and are going to, not be promiscuous and
Yeah.
actually live. Some of them take their jobs with them now, and they stay in Poland
My father
because,
went to Poland and brought back my mother
yeah,
as a wife in
fantastic.
1958. No, you're right about that.
And also the safety and the
Yes.
Poland is getting a good reputation among
Yes.
some, and then other people who are more nihilist and who are globalist and who don't like the nation state. They're the ones that I think that plant these bad ideas in people's heads. We have the same thing in the United States. I mean, I'm in academia. I'm still a psychologist. I still teach at universities, and
Mhm.
I'm glad I'm at a Christian university where we don't even have
Mm.
tenure
Mhm.
because we don't want professors that have these bad ideas to stay there for decades.
Oh. Mhm.
And I think a lot of what you're seeing, it's also infected Europe. The
Yes.
universities there are very
Yes.
nihilist
Yes.
and hedonist and communist and socialist. And I think to myself, in Europe, I have these Dutch people talking about how great socialism is. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Do they
Well,
not
in
know
Poland,
about their
in Poland, there's a whole generation who has no idea what solidarity was, has no
No.
idea about standing in lines, has no idea about being beaten in the streets by the police or thrown into prison. It, they're young people. They were born in the 90s or
Yeah.
later, right?
Right. And so I think Poland could be, and you're right. I think that's more looking in than looking out. And
Hmm.
and just being proud to be Polish. It's funny how the diaspora folks that you work with and want to go on trips with you and learn Polish, they're more excited to be Polish than
Right.
people in Poland are.
Yeah. Very often. Very
And
often.
that's kind of sad, but I think we can marry the two together. I always, like you, every October I put things out. I get people to remember where they came from. We've got these great last names, and I just decided as a young kid to just embrace it.
Hmm.
And by embracing it, I've been able to learn a lot about myself, about what God wants me to do. And I think if you are Polish and you were Catholic, my advice would be, and you're not going to church or you don't feel involved, if you can go back, and I'll just say that personally is my personal thing because it really brings peace and it ties you closer to your ancestors who made a lot of sacrifices. So you
Yes.
could sit in Chicago or I could sit in Milwaukee, and it's respect to them as well as to our Father above.
Yes, it's
And
like, why throw away this inheritance? The beautiful churches that we have in places like Milwaukee, Chicago, Buffalo, in all these older cities,
Detroit, Henchman, yes,
they left that for us.
yeah,
They didn't do it for themselves. They left that for future generations. So it's like if you get, a sack of money as an inheritance and you just throw it away. Don't waste it. And in a place like Buffalo, it's 15, 20 minutes to get anywhere. So we have people from the suburbs coming to these landmark churches, but not enough, unfortunately. We've had a whole wave, continue to have a wave of churches being closed, as in many of these places. And it's because sometimes people just don't want to drive that extra 15 minutes.
no, I get it.
But there's nothing like worshiping in one of those heritage landmark churches. There's not that constant beating the drum. It's out of sight, out of mind, right? But
Exactly.
you spoke personally. I had a period in my life where I said, well, God is everywhere, so I can just take a walk in the woods and God is there. I don't need to go to church. But in church, if we're Roman Catholic, that's where the sacraments are, which are very important for us. That's where we can
Right.
make peace with God by going to confession. That's where we have a community. We're there with people who help buttress our faith, buttress our beliefs. That's where our questions can be answered by, especially if you find a good priest who's open to talking to you, or other people who really study the faith. So at least go into that church, start by lighting a candle for an ancestor, and it's nothing to be afraid of. It's nothing to be afraid of or to be ashamed of. And we're at a point in the United States where we have to be ashamed of saying, I'm Catholic, right?
Yeah. Well, I do.
I'm not anymore. I'm just
No,
joking.
yeah, as we get older, we become afraid of less. Our Russian friends have a great expression. Ja nikogo nie boюсь, кроме Boga, right? Ja nikogo nie boję się oprócz Boga.
Hmm.
And I think people have forgotten. to love God and to fear the consequences that we'll see in this life, an unhappy, miserable life without him in it. And so, listen, it's been a wonderful program having you on, Andy, my old friend, who called me up and we arranged for me to talk to you when the Russians had invaded Ukraine, and we talked about the refugees and we talked about the work that the U.S. consulate was doing there and Polish Americans and the role they played. And we've stayed friends, and I've listened to your program. Everybody, please listen to the Polish program, and we will put the links there on this site for you to go see. It's polishprogram.org.
.com.
Polishprogram.com, and you can also listen to Andy live, which I do at 11 o'clock. It's one of my on Saturdays Eastern time. You can listen to him on the radio live. Andy, any last words for our listeners before we say goodbye?
Number one, go to Poland. Number two, do your research, find your ancestors, do that paper trail before you go to Poland, and go. Life is short. Life is short. And also make peace with your family and make peace with people around you. Pick up that phone. There may be a family member you haven't spoken with in years and years and years. And who knows, it may be the last time you speak to that person. It's really worth it. It's really worth to make peace, especially before Christmas here.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, we hope to have you back on, Andy, around Vigilia. We always on this program do a Polish Christmas program. So we'd love to have you come back and share some traditions with us. God bless you, my brother, and
God bless you too.
Do zobaczenia.
Do zobaczenia z Bogiem.
In a world full of noise, clarity is power. Stay informed, stay aware, stay top of mind.